Recently, I've been getting into the Sega Dreamcast again. I finally nabbed myself a GDMU, and despite some teething problems, it's been pretty neat to have. Now that I don't have to collect any actual games for the system, my attention has turned to getting fun accessories, none more so than the VMU. For those who aren't aware, the Dreamcast's memory cards are called visual memory units. They've got a screen in them and can display fun little monochrome graphics during gameplay. Sometimes this might just be a pixel art take on the game's logo, but some games use it in more extravagant ways. Virtua Tennis even displays a wireframe representation of the current match on it. You can also download small mini-games to the VMU to unlock bonus content in various games. The most popular example of this is probably Chow Adventure in Sonic Adventure. When setting up a VMU in the Dreamcast's file manager, you're able to pick a colour and icon for it. Being able to personalise the menu in this way is a really cool feature, and it can make it easier to keep track of which VMU is which. But the icon you pick here will also be displayed on the VMU screen while in the Dreamcast menu. Some games even contain unique icons for the VMU. For example, having a Power Stone save file will replace your VMU icon with Capcom's logo. The downside to this is you can't change a VMU's icon without formatting the whole thing, which is pretty frustrating. There is a way around this though, as we'll get to. Recently, I picked up a couple of limited edition VMUs, including this one based on DigiKarat. I thought it'd be really cool if I could somehow get an icon of Dejiko, the main character of the series, popped onto the VMU itself. But a lot of the guides to doing so are quite old and maybe not the clearest. So here's how I did exactly that. Got custom icons on my VMU working and loaded onto the actual unit. First of all, we're going to need a few things. Before anything else, you're going to need a way to get the files from your PC to a Dreamcast. As far as I know, the GDMU currently doesn't have any utility for direct transfer from SD card to VMU, so you're going to need to find another way. I'm aware of stuff like Dreamshell, which is a Dreamcast operating system that allows use of an SD card dongle for transfer to a VMU. It's the most popular method I've seen, and I would probably use it were it not for the thing I've got lying around. You see, my method makes use of something called the Brook SD Wingman adapter. I use this dongle to adapt my PlayStation 4 Fight Stick for use on Sega Saturn and Dreamcast, and with the Dreamcast specifically, it includes a 200 block VMU on board. Better still, you can use the USB port on the dongle to connect it to a PC, and you can then dump and upload VMU files to the unit. It's not an especially efficient process, but it works, and it's what I'll be using. For this route, you'll also need the Dreamcast Save tool from Brook's website. You'll also need an art program capable of making indexed BMP files. As far as I'm aware, there's a lot of art programs that can do this. I personally use Photoshop or Sprite, depending what I'm turning into an icon. I generally find Photoshop is quite good for crunching down higher res images to the lower resolution required by the VMU, and Sprite is ideal for exporting it correctly due to its easy to use palette control. If you're able to build it from the source code, Sprite is also totally free, though I personally just bought the pre-built version on Steam and it served me very well over the years. Next, we'll need a very, very old program called DC Linker. This program was originally used with the third-party Nexus 4M memory card to move saves between PC and VMU. Technically, if you have the hardware for it, you could probably still use this method to get the files onto the Dreamcast, but we'll be using the DC Linker software just for generating our icons, and not much else. You'll need to set the program to run in compatibility mode for Windows XP Service Pack 2. Finally, we're going to need a way to read and save VMU files. The Brook SD Wingman can only dump and import full VMU memory card files, not individual saves. Thankfully, the VMU Explorer tool lets us go into these memory card files, make any individual changes that we need to, and then we can just pop the edited memory card file back onto the Wingman for use on the Dreamcast. With all that set, let's make an icon. For this example, I'm going to keep it simple and use some good old pixel art. It's easier to get images with fewer colours transferred over faithfully to the VMU, as you're restricted to 16 colours total on the Dreamcast menu, and obviously only one colour on the VMU screen. The icon has to be 32 pixels by 32 pixels. We'll drop in our design, and then we're going to have to make sure the palette is correctly limited. I'll head over to the palette menu in Sprite and select New Palette from Sprite, and limit it to 16 colours. You won't actually see anything change yet, that will come in a minute. Now that that's done, we have to actually increase the size of the palette back to 256. For reasons I don't totally understand, the DC Linker software only accepts images that have 16 colours, but 256 colour entries in the palette. So we'll select Resize Palette, change it to 256, and now we've got all these blank palette entries, and 16 actually used colours in it. Sorted. That should be fine. Now we've got to head up to the colour mode option and set it to indexed. This might look a bit wrong when it converts it to indexed, depending on how many colours your image uses. Since we're using pixel art, it did a pretty good job keeping the colours intact. But if you need to change any of them, you can select Edit Palette in the palette menu, and then just start messing around with each palette entry in the colour wheel until it looks right. We've just got to save this as a BMP file, and we're done. The BMP file is primed and ready for use in the DC Linker software. So now we're going to boot up the DC Linker, with its weird, slightly sketchy looking exe name. Remember to set those compatibility options in the properties first. We're going to mouse over this bottom box, right click, and select New DCM. DCM is the file format used for Nexus memory cards. Once that's set, we'll right click this box again and select Import Caption BMP. This will allow us to select the BMP file with the icon we want to use. Once that's done, it'll bring up this new menu with a bunch of coloured boxes in it. While the Dreamcast has no issue displaying 16 colours on its data management menu, the VMU obviously can't. So here we'll select which of the 16 colours we want to appear in monochrome on the VMU itself. This is another reason why pixel art's ideal for this sort of thing. Bold outlines and shading tend to use the same colour, whereas on icons downscaled from larger images, getting a good looking result can be somewhat tedious here. Once we've selected the colours we want to appear as monochrome on the VMU, we can exit out of this dialog and our changes will automatically be saved to the DCM file. Now we've got to get that icon out of the DCM file and into a separate file that we can put onto our Brook SD Wingman's VMU. Boot up the VMU Explorer and select Open VMU. We now need to go to this drop down menu and change it so that we can actually select our DCM file. Once we've opened our DCM file, we'll see that the file for the icon will appear in the list. We're going to right click it and export it as a VMS VMI couple. It's important both files are present when we import them to the other VMU in a minute, or VMU Explorer won't be able to read the files. It's also important that you don't change the file name. If the file name isn't icon data, it won't be picked up as a VMU icon by the Dreamcast. Once the files are exported, we need to prepare the Brook SD Wingman adapter. Plug in the Wingman using a mini USB cable, and then in the USB-A port, plug in a supported controller. I use my Xbox Series X controller for example. Open the Brook Dreamcast save tool, then press start and up on the D-pad when prompted. You'll now be able to dump the memory card file from your Wingman to the PC. I had a couple of errors trying to do this, but just keep at it and it should do it eventually. Once dumped, open this file in VMU Explorer and select Import. Select your VMI VMS files that we exported a minute ago, and if you did everything right, you should now see the icon in the list of files on the VMU dump. And the VMU icon in VMU Explorer will actually change too. Next we'll save this VMU and head back to the Dreamcast save tool. Press Load from PC and select your edited VMU file. It'll be uploaded back to the Wingman's built-in VMU. If the save tool appears to hang or it says not responding, don't cancel it because you don't want to corrupt the data on the VMU. Simply let it do its thing and eventually it will say that it's done. And now that's it. You can plug it in, head to the data management menu on the Dreamcast and marvel at your handiwork. That said, we want to see our icon on the VMU screen, and the Wingman doesn't have a screen. We need a way to get our icon moved from the Wingman to another VMU, but as the icon file is considered hidden by the Dreamcast BIOS, we can't just go into the data management menu and copy it over. This is where Dream Explorer comes in. As well as letting you change the VMU icon without having to format the thing, you can also use the VMU manager included to access and copy files you usually couldn't. This is often used for games that restrict copy access in the Dreamcast BIOS, such as Phantasy Star Online save files, but you can also use it to copy the icon file from the Wingman VMU to the VMU in another controller. Once you've done that, you can now marvel at your handiwork on both the file management screen and the VMU itself.
Nice!
With all that said and done, that's how you get custom VMU icons up and running on your Dreamcast. It sounds long-winded, and the first go around, it kind of is, but it's not actually too bad once you've done it a couple of times. Honestly, the most arduous part for me is copying it to the Wingman because of the mess of cables involved hooking it up to the PC. So if you can get your hands on Dreamshell, or you already do, that's probably an easier option. On the whole though, I hope you found this interesting, and take care.